G'day everybody, how you doing? Well, time for another Fandom review. Getting two this week, man. You guys are spoiled. You guys are so spoiled. I spoil you. I spoil you, I tell you what. But since I have a day off, I may as well, take more videos and do more videos because, hey, I'm not doing anything on the 4th of July. I'm a free person. I'm independent. Anyways, so let's talk about furries on YouTube because, hey, you're watching a furry video, aren't you? You're watching a furry video on YouTube. And I'm a little novice at this, I will admit. But let's talk about other furries on YouTube. Let's bring attention to theirs. And now, forgive me if I lean in and look in real close because what's going to end up happening is I got a list of names because I'm terrible at memorizing names. I will say that. Especially if I'm good at memorizing names if I hear them enough, but I'm just kind of getting a feel for the furries YouTube, because quite frankly I haven't watched many furry videos on YouTube, and maybe if you came here you might be curious as to other furries who are doing other things on YouTube. So I think this would be a good time to see who's in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Kind of explore a little bit. So let's do that. This will be posted on a Flare article as well, which will be in the link in the description below. So, without further ado, let's get listing some names. Now, obviously, a lot of people who are famous are on there too. Like, if you look for Kagi or you look for Tu, you're going to find videos about their stuff. So, I'm not going to go for the people who are famous outside of YouTube and just happen to have a YouTube account. I'm going to be talking about people who, you might not have heard of. They might be famous outside their YouTube account, but they seem to be going towards a more YouTube-centric approach. There's one person who's particularly famous outside of YouTube on this list, but they are creating a new format in which is kind of YouTube-centric, so I kind of wanted to bring attention to that as well. All right, so first on the list is Camo Rovac. Now, Camo Rovac has a lot of, like most YouTube channels have a lot of smattering of a lot of different things. They kind of throw things and see what sticks. But their most famous one is a borrowed format from the Fine Brothers called the React series. If you're unfamiliar with the React series, basically, and there's a whole controversy behind that, which is too long for this video, so I'm not going to talk about it. But basically, the Fine Brothers have this format where they get a bunch of groups of people together. They show them some content and they get their real-time reactions and they kind of do them in a montage. And then they ask questions of those individuals about what they thought about that content. The furry version of this, done by Camo Rovac, typically has furries probably at a convention somewhere because most of these take place in hotels. Basically, they watch YouTube videos based on, based on furry things. And so they'll go ahead and go through and do that. And so what they just see their real-time reaction, and then basically they'll ask questions about it. Like, for example, there's an infamous video called Crack, which was done by some band, I think it was a German band, and it was basically pretty terrible. I'm not going to link to it. It's pretty not safe for work, guys. But they do tastefully blur it out, but they do get the reactions. It's not very well received on YouTube, by the way. It's risque. And then they kind of followed it up with like a more well received one. I can't remember the name of the video, but they actually got actual fursuiters involved, as opposed to like the first one looked like a bunch of mascots in cheap costumes that got together and did things. So, in essence, that's kind of how this thing goes. Is that they go? It's actually fun to watch because they'll have like, whoa, what is that? And then they'll, other things they did was they did like a video montage of 2010 Anthrocon, and then they did a God, what else did they do? They did the Zootopia trailer as well. So they got a bunch of those guys together and they did a bunch of reacts on those, and that is basically the first guy I wanted to talk about. The second one that we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about two different ones. in what they call the second wave of furry, which is basically people who are in the ages of 25. Like if you're younger than 25, you're considered the second wave. Like there was a first wave, which was the conference and stuff like that. Interestingly, I'm in that age group that's kind of between the first wave and the second wave, and so I kind of have this weird little weird little counterbalance between the two sides, sort of the bridge between the first wave and the second wave. So basically, the second wave is very interested in fursuiting, and like a lot of the people in the first wave might not have really been interested in doing so. Fursuiting and its ties to the fandom is actually becoming a lot more popular as of late. It wasn't to begin with, interestingly enough. They were more interested in like the art and the written works and stuff like that. And there's contention there, which I did a video on. I did a video about furries sans fursuit. That was actually my first pilot episode. So if you want to hear more about that topic, you can go over there. But obviously, since fursuiting is kind of a big deal to most of those in the second wave, some of the younger people who have YouTube channels cover this topic. Two I wanted to bring attention to are Rainy Chaos and Pocari Roo. Rainy Chaos seems to have shorter videos and talks about fandom topics as well. Pocari Roo does the same thing. Her videos tend to be a little bit longer, and she's from Australia and she's a kangaroo, so I'm biased. I'm a biased Roo. Anyways, she will do that, and she goes on a bit longer. Her videos go on, Pocari's will go on about like how do you make a fursona for a fursuit, how do you contact fursuit workers, what do you go about doing this. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. I kind of circumvented the whole ordeal. I didn't make it myself, but I know somebody who's very talented who made it and doesn't really do this stuff for a living, but she wanted to give it a shot, and she did a good job. So I got a little lucky, I suppose. My fursuit's unique because it's not made by any of those guys. But she did a good job, man. She did a real good job. Anyways, I won't go any more into that. But basically, they talk about their experience fursuiting and stuff like that. If you're interested in learning more about fursuiting and stuff like that, there's those two guys, those two gals, I should say, guy or gal. Pocari's character is a guy, so I guess it works. But yeah, those two videos are definitely good. You should check them out. Next, well, here's the interesting thing about Pocari Roo is that she said, well, she's a soda Roo. Soda Roo was a fad that happened where a lot of furries, a lot of people who liked Roo fursonas would color scheme their Roo in a fashion based off of a soda. So Pocari Roo basically made her fursuit based on the Pocari drink, which is a pretty localized drink for her area. And so she's got like this blue and white kind of motif going on. Now, she said her inspiration for this was a character called Monster Roo, which was known for his furry suit dancing. And interestingly enough, the next person I'm going to talk about is Mangusu. Mangusu, quote-unquote king of the mongooses, is known for his fursuit dancing. And he did so under the character of Monster Roo. He's done so under his own character. He's had many fursuits over the years. He's officially retired Monster Roo. So Monster Roo is retired. But he does do it under his own new fursuit, which has got the mongoose with the little crown on it. And he's still fursuit dancing to this day. So, no surprise, his channel's got a lot of videos, of him dancing. He also links to other people who post videos of him dancing. But interestingly enough, he's actually kind of doing his own YouTube thing, other than the dancing thing. So this is why I'm bringing him up as a topic, is because he's kind of working with a person called Dash Tiger to make this thing called Dash and Mangy in the Morning. And it's actually a very recent concoction of his, and you can go see it on his channel. Basically, it sort of takes from vibes from Good Mythical Morning, which is also a popular YouTube stick. And it's well formatted. He usually starts off and they talk about a particular topic, then they get to questions, and then they kind of have like a Vine of the Week or something like that. And so they kind of have a format going, and it actually works very well for them. Unlike myself, who just talks to a camera in a vlog format and is very boring. No, just kidding. So that's another reason why I want to watch these things, right? So I can actually learn some things about how to actually do good, interesting YouTube videos. But there, if you want to watch a little show about, and they talk about fandom topics and fursuiting topics, of course, you can watch that. Comedy. This one's not that active. I think the latest one was like 4 days ago, but then like it was like a month. So there's a bit of a. Sometimes when it comes to updating, these things go a little slower. Some of them are update slower. Some of them update faster. Some of the ones I just talked about actually update pretty regularly, with the exception of the whole Furries React. Because of course Furries React is going to take a little time to get together. You got to get a bunch of furries together. You got to get them all watching the same video. You got to capture their reactions. You got to ask them all the same questions, and then you got to put it together in a montage. That takes time, guys. So it takes a lot longer than me talking my face off at a camera. Okay, it takes a lot longer. So you got to understand that particular formatted things will take longer to present than just off the cuff. Things at a YouTube camera, all right? Mine are off the cuff. I'm trying to get better at improvising and talking without doing that thing. It's kind of a self-help as well as providing content that might be of interest to somebody. But that being said, we're moving on to Differently. Their channel's interesting. The funniest thing is that their most popular video is like, how do I come like how to tell someone you're a furry. So basically it's kind of a topic that a lot of other furry channels cover. But their video is hilarious in that it's only a minute long, and it basically is a sketch of somebody trying to tell somebody that they're a furry, and they just kind of get distracted and can't even think about what they're doing. And then when he goes, well, what were you going to tell me? And then he's just in fursuit, and he's just like, I have no idea, man. I forgot what I was going to tell you. Sorry. And then he walks off. Because he was just up to him as a human being. And he's like, man, I got to tell you something. He's like, what? You got to tell me this? And he's like, no. He's like, are you tell me this? No. And he's like, well, what are you going to tell me? He's like, I completely forgot. It's well done. You should see it. The second most popular one features Sky, and Sky, yes, from the Fursanas documentary that we talked about like very well back in the first episode, which I'd already linked you to. So basically, he's like, they were doing a My Strange Addiction parody, which is great because My Strange Addiction is kind of a silly show to begin with. So basically, he was addicted to glitter, because glitter's awesome, right? Yeah. Anyway, so basically he's obsessed with glitter, and then he finds somebody who's obsessed with something else, and it's kind of a funny little per take on the whole My Strange Addiction thing. Which, by the way, it's kind of funny that the addiction that Sky lets out, and they're being addicted to glitter, actually looks like an actual affliction, whereas the furry episode kind of didn't. And in speaking of the furry episode it didn't seem like an obsession. Like, she seemed like she was a normal kid who just got hit by a camera that was trying to make it look like an obsession. Speaking of which, we're going to move on to the next YouTube person, which, by the way, is probably the least. Gosh dang it! I really hate working with computers in a fursuit. It is tough. The next person on the list actually goes into this topic, a very popular topic within the fandom, and talking about it. And I was thinking about talking about these things myself, but now that I see that there's an actual formatted channel that kind of goes over these things already and does so in a manner which I kind of agree with, and it seems to be very professionally done, very well done, and very well articulated, I don't have to touch those topics. Yay! I could just point you to this other channel who will talk about those topics. And that is the Furries portrayal in the media. Aberguine. Gosh, my pronunciations. I'm sorry. Aberguine. Looks like a dog, canine character. She does these videos. She's got a hanging tongue out. It's kind of cute. she does these videos about furry portrayals in the media. She's covered, her best one I think is the CSI one, because let's just say CSI is just full of fun to just point and go, oh my God, no, why? And full of anti-intellectual drivel that's trying to dress itself up as intellectual. And that's the worst kind. But anyways, so Aberguine covers CSI episodes. She's covered Tyra Banks very recently. She covered a lot of stuff. She's got 13 episodes of it up so far. She does other topics, of course, but this seems to be her main draw, and I think it's probably a very good thing. She basically has the series in a very concise and formatted way. She covers a lot of like big things that are only like 5 minutes, and I envy her in that because I apparently can't do that, because if you look at the timer below, we're already at about 16 or 15 minutes in, and I've only covered like 5 people. I gotta get better at being speedy and editing and everything. But basically, she writes things on the spirit of the portrayal in the media and the accuracy. Basically, how accurately does this episode or bit pertain to the fandom, and how much is it accurate to what actually the fandom is in its portrayal of the knowledge? And number 2, what is the spirit of it? Like, what's the intention of those who are making this thing? Are they going to basically make it intentionally? Are they trying to make it intent on trying to make us look silly, or is their intent actually trying to educate and make, and actually try and make people see us for a little bit more? What is that? And so what we decide is that she rates those 2 things on a score from 0 to 100, based on the basically percentage, and then takes an average of the 2. And so it's a very good thing, and I would recommend you will watch it. She's not very subscribed to. She's only got 1,500 subscribers, so I think she'll grow really quick, because her videos are very well edited. Next on the list is Culturally Effed. Culturally Effed basically takes the format of a Vsauce or a PBS, probably mostly PBS Ideas channel, because they're actually subscribed to that, and that's on their little affiliation list. But Culturally Effed basically goes over more intellectual side of the fandom, actually goes more into sociology of human beings, and kind of tries to tie in the fandom stuff with it. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're less than successful, but they're all good thoughts, and they're all interesting things to watch. So I would highly recommend you watch it. They talk about, what they call it, anthropology. They go into kind of anthropological things in the very early days, and then they kind of go into general media ideas and stuff like that. So they cover a wide range of topics about furry, quote-unquote, furry influences in media. They weren't really called, and I was like, well, they weren't really called furry back then, but they were called, but basically that's what they ended up being called in the modern vernacular. So it's an interesting thing to watch. It's they do very entertaining things with their little episodes, and I would recommend you go watching that if you're interested in nerding out over things. And then, so the last one I'll talk about seems to be one that has a pretty good subscription base, and is pretty well named. It's called Fur Media. It's a group of 3 individuals who Punyawa, Space Bear Sparks, and recently Dark Fuzzy. Dark Fuzzy is actually a new addition, I guess. And they talk about furry topics. Theirs is pretty long. They make my videos look short, which is an accomplishment, because my original live journal tagline was more TLDR than you. So I'm pretty long-winded. And the fact that they can make me seem short-winded is pretty spectacular. But their format's kind of podcast style. So if you're not interested in the podcast style, and quite frankly, I'm not. Like, it's not my thing. But people are, podcast style is pretty popular, despite it not being quite my cup of tea. So I think it'd be a disservice to kind of, push away from something just because I might not find enjoyment in it. Others might. And they do talk about topics related to the furry fandom. They do convention reviews. They do reviews of content in a podcast style with the new now 3 people talking with one another. They do interviews, which I think there's the strongest one that I felt was one of the ones I watched was their interview with Differently, which is kind of how I found them, because I found Differently and then I kind of found the interview with them, and I found that one kind of fun. Particularly their background stories was kind of interesting, and so they do interviews, and those interviews are interesting. So that's one you could take a check out on. And that's all I got for right now. Those are the only ones I could find that seem to have a unique format and seem to have something going for it, that seem to be updated on a modern basis, that don't seem like they're not inactive and stuff like that. So, tell me what you think. If you have any furry channels that you would recommend, you could go to Flera and post the comment there, and say here's another thing, because I'm going to be posting my channel on the comment section of that. Full disclosure, the reason I wanted to make this video is the reason I wanted to make the article about the furries on YouTube is because I wanted to introduce my channel. But I was like, well, because I was thinking about, posting my channel onto Flera, and then I was like, well, that's kind of jerkish. I really hate self-promotion. I really hate it. I don't know why. I know you have to do it. I know you have to do it. I know, because look at Donald Trump. I mean, come on. Self-promotion works. It works. Why don't I trust it? And I've seen Flare articles where people self-promote themselves. Gaming Forever's done it. Fred's done it. All right? Everyone's done it, man. Why don't you want to do it? It's like, I don't want to do it. If people are interested in what I got to say, they'll come. If I build it, they will come. They will. If people are interested, they'll show up. And so basically, I was going to write about other people's channels, because I have to do research on other people's channels because I don't want to step on any toes. And it's like I wanted to make sure that I was doing something unique. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to see if there was things I could be doing better, but without flat out stealing formats or anything like that. So it was kind of for my self-interest and all, but also I felt that, and this is an important thing for me about presenting things like this. It's like, can somebody else get something else out of this that might be useful, rather than for my own self-interest? And I said, well, then let me promote other people's works and go from there as I'm researching it. So that's basically how this whole video and article came about. So hopefully you found some interesting furry channels. If you have your own to share, you can share it in the comment section below here. You can go to the Flare article, which I posted in the description, and you could post a link or place on that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people self-promoting their own channels there. But until then, I'm going to get the hop out of here. It's warm today, and I got to cool off. But thank you for watching, and hope to see you again next time. Thanks very much.